The sleek glass doors of the prestige auto showroom slid open, allowing Clint Eastwood to step inside. The luxury car dealership was a dazzling display of wealth, gleaming sports cars lined up under bright spotlights, their polished surfaces reflecting the grandeur of the place. Clint, dressed in his signature rugged style, boots, jeans, and a weathered leather jacket, walked in, hands in his pockets, calmly scanning the collection. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He was there for a car. Behind the marble reception desk, the manager, a tall man in a tailored suit named Richard Vaughn, noticed Clint enter. His sharp eyes quickly assessed him, and within seconds, his face twisted into a smug smirk. He nudged a young salesman standing beside him. "Watch this," he whispered. "Some old cowboy thinks he can afford a car here." Clint stopped by a black sports car, its sleek design catching his attention. He ran his fingers lightly along the hood, appreciating the craftsmanship. Just then, Richard strode up, arms crossed, his tone laced with condescension. "Excuse me, sir," he said. "Can I help you with something?" Clint turned to him, his expression unreadable. "Just looking," he replied. Richard chuckled under his breath. "I see," he said, glancing at Clint's worn-out boots. "Well, let me save you some time. The cheapest car here costs more than your entire wardrobe. We don't do test drives for people who can't afford to buy." A few customers nearby overheard the comment and turned to watch. The young salesman beside Richard shifted uncomfortably, but Richard continued, his voice dripping with arrogance. "This isn't some roadside dealership, old man," he sneered. "Our clients are high-profile, CEOs, celebrities, real millionaires. Not people like you." Clint remained still, his sharp gaze locked onto Richard. There was no anger in his eyes, just the quiet, steady look of a man who had seen far worse in life. He glanced around the showroom, noticing how some employees were whispering, some laughing. Richard smirked, assuming Clint would quietly leave, embarrassed. But Clint simply nodded. "That so?" he said, his voice calm. Richard took his silence as a victory. He turned to the young salesman. "Make sure security escorts him out. I don't want him scratching up the cars with those boots of his." Just as two security guards approached, ready to remove him, Clint pulled out his phone. With a single press, he made a call. The room remained silent as he spoke into the receiver. "Yeah, it's me. Send the team over." He hung up. Richard frowned, confused. Clint stepped back, leaned casually against a pillar, and waited. Minutes later, the sound of screeching tires filled the air. Through the glass walls of the showroom, everyone turned to see a convoy of high-end vehicles, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Rolls-Royces, all rolling in, parking one after another. The doors swung open, and a group of well-dressed men and women stepped out. The tension in the room skyrocketed as the richest car collectors in the city, some of whom Richard personally tried to court as clients, walked in. A man in a sleek navy suit, the CEO of one of the biggest auto industries, strode up to Clint and shook his hand. "Mr. Eastwood. I got your call. What's the occasion?" Clint shrugged. "Thought I'd bring some friends over. Some of them are looking to buy a few cars." Richard's face drained of color. The very people he spent years trying to impress, were Clint's acquaintances. The realization hit him like a truck. Clint turned to the group. "Gentlemen, this is Prestige Auto. I was just about to make a purchase, but apparently, they don't sell to people like me." The CEO frowned, turning to Richard. "Is that true?" Richard stammered, sweat forming at his brow. "No, sir. Of course not. There's been a misunderstanding." One of the wealthy guests, a well-known Hollywood producer, glanced at Clint. "You were looking for a car, Eastwood?" Clint nodded. The producer grinned. "I say we buy out the whole showroom. Let's take our business somewhere that actually respects people." The room went dead silent. Richard's heart pounded as his biggest potential clients began murmuring in agreement. One by one, they turned away from the showroom's offers. The CEO shook his head in disappointment. "If this is how you treat customers, Richard, I don't think we'll be doing business here anymore." Richard's face turned ghostly pale. He turned to Clint, desperate now. "Mr. Eastwood, I had no idea." "If I had known who you were," Clint cut him off with a cold stare. "That's the problem," he said. "Respect shouldn't depend on who someone is. It should be given to everyone." Richard opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He had humiliated Clint without a second thought, and now, his reputation, and his business, were crumbling before his eyes. As Clint turned to leave, the young salesman who had witnessed everything ran after him. "Sir," he called. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for how my boss treated you. That wasn't right." Clint gave the kid a nod of acknowledgement. "You've got a good head on your shoulders," he said. "Find a better place to work, one that values character over arrogance." The young salesman nodded, determined. As Clint stepped outside, the rest of the wealthy guests followed, taking their business with them. Richard slumped against the counter, realizing the damage he had done. Within minutes, Prestige Auto had gone from the most elite dealership in the city, to a ghost town. Clint walked toward his car, a classic Mustang parked down the street. Before getting in, he turned back one last time, tipping his hat as he muttered, "People never learn." With that, he drove off, leaving behind a lesson no one in that showroom would ever forget. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and hit the bell icon for more powerful stories like this one.